Emma was only 12 years old, but her eyes looked older, as if she had carried worry for many years. She walked into the small-town hospital with her aunt, holding her arm tightly. Her steps were slow, careful, almost quiet, as if she did not want anyone to notice her. The automatic doors opened with a soft sound, yet even that made Emma jump a little. Her Aunt Linda smiled softly at her to give comfort, but Emma still looked troubled. She kept looking behind her, checking the doors again and again. Anyone watching could tell she was afraid of something or someone. The nurse at the front desk, Megan, noticed the fear immediately. She had worked in the hospital for many years and understood the signs of a child who did not feel safe. "Hello, sweetheart," Megan said gently. "Are you here to see a doctor?" Emma did not answer. Her fingers held tighter onto Linda's sleeve. She kept her head down, her long hair partly covering her face. Linda cleared her throat and gave a small, tired smile. "She just needs a safe place tonight," Linda said. "She is not feeling comfortable at home." Megan nodded. She did not ask too many questions because she could see how fragile Emma looked. Instead, she guided them to a quiet waiting area. Emma sat in a chair close to the wall. She did not choose the middle seat. She chose the corner, the spot where she felt she could not be touched or surprised from behind. The waiting room lights were soft, and the air smelled like disinfectant, but Emma did not notice any of that. Her eyes stayed locked on the entrance. Every time the door opened, she took a small breath in, her shoulders lifting slightly. When she saw it was only a nurse or a visitor, she let the breath out. Megan returned with 2 cups of water and placed one in front of Emma. The girl looked at it but did not touch it. Her hands stayed tightly folded in her lap. "Emma, you're safe here," Linda whispered, rubbing her back gently. "Nobody can come in without permission." Emma nodded, but her eyes still showed doubt. A doctor named Harper walked over and crouched down to Emma's level. He smiled kindly. "Hi, Emma. I'm Dr. Harper. Would it be all right if I asked you a few questions?" Emma did not speak. She only looked at her aunt as if asking permission. Linda nodded calmly. "You can trust him," she whispered. Dr. Harper's voice stayed soft and patient. "Is something at home making you uncomfortable?" Emma lowered her head. Her lips trembled. She did not speak, but she slowly nodded once. "Okay," Dr. Harper said gently. "You do not have to tell me everything right now. You can take your time. You're safe here." When Emma heard the word safe, her eyes lifted for a second. But then she looked back at the entrance again. Her aunt sighed, knowing exactly what she was looking for. Megan, the nurse, noticed the pattern too. "Is someone coming after her?" she quietly asked Linda. Linda hesitated for a moment. Then she nodded. "Her stepfather. She is afraid he might come. I told him she needed rest, but he did not take it well." Megan's expression changed to concern. She quickly informed security to keep an eye on the front door just in case. They agreed to stay near the entrance but not frighten Emma with too much attention. A few minutes later, a social worker named Grace joined them. She had a warm voice the kind children trusted easily. She sat across from Emma with a friendly smile. "Hi, Emma. I'm Grace. I help kids who feel scared or unsure about things. You don't have to speak if you don't want to. I'll stay right here." Emma slowly lifted her eyes. She studied Grace's face, trying to see if she felt safe with her. For the first time since entering the hospital, Emma's body relaxed a little, not much, but just enough for Grace to notice. "That's good," Grace said softly. "You're not alone here." Emma finally whispered her first word since arriving. "Okay." It was small, soft, almost lost in the air, but it was a beginning. Grace gently asked if she felt unsafe with someone at home. Emma looked down again, her voice barely a breath. "Yes." Linda reached for her hand. "It's all right, sweetheart. They will help you?" The hospital staff exchanged quiet looks. They all understood now. Emma was not sick. She was frightened. She needed protection, not medicine. As the hours passed, the hospital became calmer. The night shift lights dimmed. Patients slept in their rooms. Nurses moved quietly through the halls. But Emma stayed awake, still watching the entrance, still afraid that her stepfather might appear at any moment. Megan checked on her again. "Would you like a blanket?" Emma nodded this time. It was a small sign of trust. When the blanket was placed over her lap, she held it tightly, as if it could shield her from all the fear she carried inside. Nobody in the hospital knew that this quiet night would soon turn into something unbelievable, something the entire town would talk about. Emma was not alone anymore. She just did not know it yet. Something big was already on the way, something that would change her life forever. The night grew quieter in the hospital, but Emma's heart was still filled with worry. Even when she tried to relax, her eyes returned again and again to the entrance. Each small sound made her jump a little. Her Aunt Linda sat close beside her, hoping her presence would ease the fear, but Emma's mind stayed tense. Grace, the social worker, knew she needed to take slow, gentle steps. She sat down again with a notebook in her hands, though she kept it closed so Emma did not feel pressured. "Emma," she said softly, "you are doing very well. You do not need to hurry. You can tell me only what you want to." Emma looked up for a second, then back at her hands. Her fingers kept twisting the blanket, a nervous motion she didn't realize she was doing. Grace continued. Can you tell me if someone made you feel unsafe today? Emma stayed silent for a long moment. Then she nodded slightly. Yes. Grace leaned forward just a little, her voice still gentle. Is it someone at home? Emma nodded again. Linda swallowed hard. She had been waiting for this moment, but it still hurt her heart. Grace asked quietly, is it your stepfather? Emma's eyes filled with tears instantly. That small reaction gave Grace the answer she needed. She did not want to push too fast, but she needed to understand enough to help the girl. Emma whispered, he gets angry very fast. Her voice shook. I do not feel safe. Her Grace nodded softly, not showing any judgment, only understanding. Thank you for telling me. That is very brave. Emma wiped her tears with the edge of her sleeve, embarrassed. Grace handed her a tissue, and Emma accepted it with a small, trembling hand. Did he say he was coming here tonight? Grace asked. Yes, Emma whispered. He said he will take me home. Linda added gently, he thinks he has the right to, even though Emma does not feel comfortable. Grace wrote a small note in her notebook. Okay, we can make sure Emma is not left alone, and we can speak with security. She has a right to feel safe. And Emma took a deep breath. For the first time, she felt someone was truly listening. Dr. Harper returned and sat beside Grace. Emma, we want you to know something important. You are in a safe building. There are guards, staff, and your aunt. Nobody can take you without permission. But he gets angry. Emma whispered again, voice trembling. Dr. Harper nodded calmly. And that is why we are here. To protect you. Emma looked up, searching his face to see if he meant it. He did. Grace asked, is there someone your father trusted? Someone who cared about you both? Linda looked at her hands for a moment, then nodded slowly. Her biological father had friends. Very loyal friends. They were part of a motorcycle charity group. They helped people a lot. Dr. Harper tilted his head. A motorcycle group? Yes, Linda said. They do charity rides, fundraisers, community work. They were very close to Emma's dad. Grace's eyes softened. Do you think they would come if you asked? Linda hesitated. It has been years, I don't know if they still meet. But they loved Emma's father. They respected him. Emma looked up at the mention of her real dad. She missed him deeply, and anything connected to him still touched her heart. Would it help you to know someone is watching out for you tonight? Grace asked Emma gently. Emma nodded almost immediately. Yes, I don't want to be alone. Linda pulled out her phone. Then I will try. She stepped aside to make the call, walking down the hallway where her voice would not disturb Emma. She dialed a number she had not used in a long time. After several rings, a deep voice answered. Hello. Linda's voice shook a little. This is Linda. I'm Emma's aunt. There was silence on the other end. Then the man said softly, we remember you. And we remember him. Linda explained everything slowly. Emma's fear, the stepfather's arrival, the hospital, the reason she reached out. She finished with a shaky breath. I don't know if you can help. Emma needs support. There was no hesitation this time. The man's voice became firm, calm, certain. We're coming. Linda blinked. Who is coming, everyone? He replied simply. When she returned to the waiting area, Grace looked at her with hopeful eyes. Did they answer? Yes, Linda whispered, still stunned. They're coming. Emma looked up. Ooh. People who cared about your father, Linda said softly. People who care about you too, even if you don't know them yet. Emma did not fully understand, but something inside her eased. A small bit of warmth replaced some of the fear. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, the night remained still. Nothing yet suggested what was about to happen. No one in the building knew that a simple phone call had already started something powerful. Something that would surprise the entire staff, the visitors, and even the town citizens. A wave of support was on its way. Not one person, not a small group, but hundreds, and they were coming for one reason, to make sure Emma felt safe. The hospital hallways were quiet, but something in the air felt different now. It was as if the building was waiting for something. Emma sat close to her aunt, holding the warm blanket on her lap. Her eyes still looked toward the entrance, but there was a small change, less fear, a tiny bit of hope beginning to grow. Grace, the social worker, noticed the shift. She sat beside Emma again, speaking in the same calm, warm voice. You are doing very well, Emma. You are safe here, and your aunt told me that help is on the way. Emma looked up, confused but curious. Help? What kind? Grace smiled softly. People who knew your father. People who want to support you. Emma pressed her lips together. But they don't know me. They do, Linda said gently. Your father spoke about you all the time. They cared about him, so they care about you. Emma stared at her aunt, trying to understand how strangers could care about her. She wasn't used to people rushing to protect her. Most of her life, she felt she had to protect herself. Linda could see the doubt in her eyes. She touched her shoulder. You'll see, your father had a good heart. He surrounded himself with good people. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, the world continued normally. Cars passed by, streetlights flickered. A small breeze moved the trees. No one on the outside knew that a message had already traveled far beyond the town. The riders get the call miles away, in a quiet cafe where a few men in leather jackets were having late night coffee. A phone buzzed on the table. The leader, known as Big Tom, looked at the screen. His expression changed from relaxed to serious in seconds. He stood up and the others immediately noticed. Is something wrong? One biker asked. Tom nodded slowly. It's about Emma and her father. The group fell silent. Emma's father, Mark, had been one of their most loved members. He was kind, strong, and always ready to help others. His passing years ago had left a big hole in the group, but none of them ever forgot his daughter. They remembered her small smile, her bright eyes, and the way Mark talked about her as if she was his whole world. What happened to her? Another biker asked. Tom took a deep breath. She's scared. She and her aunt are at the hospital. She needs support. The reaction was instant. Chairs scraped the floor as the men stood up. Coffee cups were left half full. Nobody asked whether they should go. They only asked one thing: how fast can we get there? Tom made a call to the rest of the group. His voice was steady, clear, and strong. It's Emma. She needs us. He gave no other details he didn't need to. The riders understood. Within minutes, the message spread. Phones buzzed across the city and neighboring towns. Group chats lit up. Engines started. Jackets were pulled on. Helmets clicked shut. People who were home with their families working late shifts or preparing to sleep changed their plans instantly. For Emma, they would come. Back at the hospital inside the waiting area, Emma sat quietly, unaware of the growing movement outside the hospital walls. Linda watched her niece closely. The girl's shoulders still held tension, but she no longer looked like she was shrinking into the chair. She had a little more courage now. Grace checked her notes. Emma, is there anyone else you trust? Someone you feel safe with? Emma thought for a moment. My teachers sometimes. But they can't be here. Linda added softly, sweetheart, you're not alone. People are already on their way. Emma's eyebrows lifted. How many people? Before Linda could answer, the hospital doors opened again. Emma stiffened, but it was only a nurse pushing a cart. Still, the small moment reminded everyone how sensitive she remained. Dr. Harper approached them. Security is keeping an eye on the entrance. If anyone comes who should not be here, they will handle it calmly. Emma nodded, then whispered, thank you. Her voice was small, but the thank you felt big, like she was slowly finding strength again. Grace smiled warmly. You are not alone anymore, Emma. Sometimes, the right people show up when you least expect them. Emma looked out the window. The parking lot looked empty and quiet. She could not imagine anyone coming for her. She could not imagine people choosing to protect her, just because they cared about her father. But that was exactly what was happening. The first signs far away, the soft rumble of engines began to grow. At first, it was faint like a distant storm rolling in. A security guard near the entrance paused and listened. He frowned, unsure if he was imagining it. The sound grew louder and louder. The guard stepped outside, eyes widening. Headlights were approaching, many of them. One row of motorcycles turned down the street, then another. The engines filled the night, echoing through the quiet town. Inside the hospital, Emma felt something. She didn't know what it was, but the air suddenly felt different. She looked at Linda. Did something happen? Linda smiled, her voice soft but full of emotion. Yes, sweetheart. They're here. Emma blinked, confused. Who? Linda squeezed her hand gently, everyone. The soft rumble outside the hospital grew stronger by the second. At first, the sound was low and steady like faraway thunder. But then it grew deeper, fuller, richer, like a wave of power rolling across the town. The security guard stepped out again, squinting into the night. His eyes widened slowly. This was not 5 bikes, not 10, not even 20. This was an entire community arriving. The first motorcycles turned into the parking lot, their headlights glowing bright in the darkness. The riders moved slowly and respectfully, following every rule, keeping the engines at a soft idle so they would not disturb any patients inside. One by one, they parked in neat lines, forming rows like a guard of honor. Inside the hospital, people began to notice the growing movement outside. A nurse walking past the window paused, blinked twice, and whispered, "What in the world?" Another nurse joined her. Are those all for the same person? Back in the waiting area, Emma felt something she did not understand. The building felt different, safer somehow. The air carried a quiet strength, a feeling she could not name. Linda knew what was happening. She stood, walked toward the hallway window, and peered outside. Tears filled her eyes instantly. The motorcycle group had not forgotten them. They had not forgotten Mark, and they certainly had not forgotten Emma. Grace walked up beside her. Is that them? Linda nodded. Yes, and that's not even all of them. More are coming. A sea of leather jackets and kind hearts, more headlights appeared on the road. More engines joined the chorus. The number kept growing. 50 bikes, 80, 100. The security team stepped outside in surprise, not to stop them but to understand what was happening. The riders continued arriving, parking side by side, forming quiet, respectful rows. Their jackets bore patches with words like unity, support, and care. Some held small gift bags, others held blankets. A few simply crossed their arms and looked around, watching the hospital with calm eyes. None of them looked angry. None of them looked reckless. Every single one of them looked protective inside. Emma sat up straighter. She could hear something warm, steady, and strangely comforting. Is something happening outside? She asked softly. Linda smiled through teary eyes. Yes, sweetheart. Emma looked nervous again. Is it him? No. Linda said gently, shaking her head. It's the people your father loved. Emma blinked. She wasn't sure she heard correctly. Grace crouched down beside her. Emma, a lot of people who cared about your father have come. They are here to support you tonight. People I don't know. Emma whispered. Yes, Linda said softly. But they know you. They knew you when you were little. Your dad showed them pictures of you all the time. And Emma's small hands tightened around her blanket. She felt a strange mix of confusion and hope. Inside the lobby, shock and silence as security allowed a small group of riders to step inside the lobby. They removed their helmets respectfully, revealing calm, kind faces. They placed their helmets on the floor and stood in a quiet line, not blocking the entrance, not raising their voices. A nurse approached cautiously. Can I help you? The tallest rider, Big Tom, gave a polite nod. We're here for Emma. We heard she needed support. The nurse stared for a moment. These men looked strong and intimidating on the outside, but their voices were soft, almost gentle. Emma, she repeated, surprised. Yes, Tom said. We won't cause any trouble. We only want her to know she's not alone. The nurse nodded slowly, touched by the sincerity in his voice. Stay here. I'll let the social worker know. Emma meets her father's friends. When Linda told Emma that some of the riders were inside waiting to see her, Emma hesitated. She didn't know them. She wasn't sure she could trust anyone new. But Grace gently asked, would you like to see just one of them first? You don't have to talk, you can just look. Emma thought for a moment, then nodded. Grace walked to the lobby and returned with one rider, a middle-aged man with gentle eyes and a calm smile. He knelt down so he wouldn't look too tall or scary. His voice was soft. Hi, Emma. I'm Sam. I knew your dad. He talked about you every time we rode. He loved you very much. Emma's eyes widened. Nobody had spoken about her father like that in years. Sam reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small keychain, a little metal star. Your dad gave this to me the day you were born. He said, hold on to this for her, just in case she ever needs a reminder that she's a brave girl. And Emma stared at the keychain in shock. Her throat tightened. She didn't speak, but she slowly reached out her hand. Sam placed the small star gently in her palm. Her eyes filled with tears. Sam smiled warmly. We're all here for you, Emma. All of us. The parking lot becomes a shield by now. The entire hospital staff had gathered near the windows. It looked like a peaceful gathering, not a loud crowd. Riders stood around the entrance, forming a silent, respectful barrier, not blocking anyone but protecting the space. They weren't here to fight. They were here to support a child. A doctor whispered, I've never seen anything like this. A nurse replied, it feels like the whole town is standing guard. And in a way it was true. Emma looked out the window and whispered, they all came for me. Her aunt wrapped her arm around her shoulders. Yes, sweetheart. They came because you matter, because your father mattered, and because nobody should face fear alone. For the first time that night, Emma's fear began to fade. Not completely, but enough to feel something new hope. The hospital had never seen a night like this. Nurses whispered to one another near the front desk. Doctors stood by the windows in quiet shock, and visitors paused mid-step to stare outside. The rows of motorcycles looked endless, bright headlights shining chrome, and leather jackets lined up in calm formation. But despite their strong appearance, the whole group behaved with a gentle respect that surprised everyone. Nurse Megan, who first greeted Emma, walked to the window with a cup of tea in her hand. She almost dropped it when she counted the riders. There must be 200 out there, she whispered. Dr. Harper stood beside her, arms crossed thoughtfully. Closer to 250, I think, he said quietly. I've never seen a community show up like this for one child. Another nurse added. And they're so organized. They're not blocking the entrance. They're not being loud. It's like they know exactly how to keep the hospital calm. The staff had expected noise, maybe confusion. But instead, they saw kindness everywhere. Some riders held small signs that simply said, you are safe or you're not alone, Emma. Others handed out bottled water to visitors. A few sat on the ground knitting scarves. They had brought their own yarn. Some riders even helped elderly visitors get to their cars safely. The hospital, which usually felt tense during late hours, now felt strangely warm. Grace shares the news in the waiting area. Grace returned with a gentle smile. Emma, the staff wants you to know that everything is okay. They are very touched by the support outside. Emma held the little metal star in her hand, the one Sam gave her. She rubbed her thumb over it again and again, feeling comfort from its smooth surface. Are they really all here for me? She asked softly. Yes, Grace said. Every single one of them. And Emma's eyes widened again. She looked so small sitting in the chair, her blanket wrapped around her shoulders, yet tonight, she had an entire community standing outside for her. Visitors react with surprise and warmth. Word spread throughout the hospital faster than anyone expected. People visiting their loved ones peeked outside, curious about the huge group of motorcycles. A man visiting his mother in the ICU smiled and said, "I've lived in this town my whole life. I've never seen bikers behave like this. They're like a wall of kindness." A young mother holding her baby stepped into the lobby. "They helped walk us to our car," she told the receptionist. "One of them even held the door open for me. They're so gentle." Another visitor added, "It feels peaceful outside. Strong but peaceful." The hospital security team, who had been worried at first, relaxed quickly. They watched the riders carefully but soon realized there was nothing to worry about. The bikers had come not to cause trouble, but to protect. One guard nodded approvingly and said, "These people, they're real guardians." Inside the lobby, a quiet meeting. 10 riders were allowed to stay inside the lobby, no more, so the hospital would not be crowded. They removed their helmets, set them neatly on the floor, and sat quietly in a row. They didn't take photos, didn't make noise, didn't act proud. They simply waited. A little girl walking past with her mother stared at them. One biker waved kindly, and she giggled. An older woman smiled at them and said, "Thank you for keeping the hospital calm tonight." The one rider responded softly, "We just want Emma to feel safe, ma'am." The woman put her hand to her chest. "Bless you." Emma comes closer to the lobby after a long hour of watching from a distance. Emma finally whispered to Linda, I want to see them again." Linda nodded and gently guided her toward the lobby. Grace walked beside them, ready to support Emma if she felt overwhelmed. As soon as the riders saw the small girl approaching, they stood up, not suddenly, not loudly, but with gentle respect. They placed their hands over their hearts or bowed their heads slightly. It was not a formal salute, just a warm sign of care. Emma looked around shyly. She had never seen so many people act so softly for her. Her feet stopped moving and she hesitated. Sam, the rider who gave her the keychain, stepped forward just a little. "No rush, Emma," he said calmly. "You can stay right there if you want. We're here to support you from wherever you feel comfortable." Emma nodded nervously. Then she whispered, "Thank you, all of you." Her voice was small, but it carried across the lobby. Several riders blinked back tears. The hospital staff responded with support. Dr. Harper approached the group. "I want to thank everyone for respecting our rules and helping us keep things calm tonight." Tom, the leader, nodded. "We're here for one reason, Doctor. To make sure Emma feels safe." "And you've done that beautifully," Grace added, smiling. Megan, the nurse, stepped forward with a soft expression. "This hospital has seen many things, but never this kind of support. You've shown something powerful tonight." Tom replied gently, "Kindness is powerful, and Emma deserves it." Megan smiled, touched by his words. "She does." A shield of peace outside, the riders continued forming a peaceful circle around the hospital entrance. Their presence was strong, but never threatening. Every person who walked past felt comforted, protected, safe. Emma looked out the glass doors at the sea of jackets, helmets, and warm lights. For the first time since entering the hospital, she whispered a sentence filled with relief. "I'm not scared anymore." Linda wrapped her arm around her shoulders. "That's because you're surrounded by love, sweetheart, real love." Emma held the little star in her hand, and for the first time that night she smiled. The hospital felt calm for the first time since Emma arrived. The riders outside stood like a quiet shield, their presence warm and protective. Inside, Emma sat on a bench near the lobby window, her small fingers still holding the metal star from her father. She looked peaceful, not completely free from worry, but safer than she had felt in a long time. Then the automatic front doors opened. A cold breeze entered the lobby, brushing against Emma's cheek. She lifted her head slowly. She didn't know why, but something inside her tightened again, like her heart remembered the fear before her mind did. Linda felt it too. She placed a gentle hand on Emma's back. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered, but the next second proved why Emma's body had reacted before she even saw anything. A man stepped into the hospital lobby. He wore a thick jacket, walked with firm steps, and scanned the room with sharp eyes. When his gaze landed on Emma, his shoulders rose slightly, as if preparing himself to take control of the situation. It was her stepfather. Grace noticed the shift in the room. She hurried forward calmly, stepping between the man and Emma before any tension could rise. "Good evening," Grace said kindly. "How can I help you?" The man's tone stayed firm but controlled. "I'm here for Emma. She should come home with me." Emma's breathing grew shallow. Linda held her tighter. The riders in the lobby straightened their backs, not aggressively, but protectively. The change was subtle but powerful. Grace kept her voice warm and professional. "Sir, Emma is with her aunt and the hospital team right now. She does not feel comfortable going home tonight. We need to understand the situation clearly before making any decisions." He frowned. "She's my responsibility." Linda stepped forward with calm strength. "She needs time," she said softly. The man opened his mouth to respond, but then he heard something he didn't expect, the soft shuffle of boots behind him. He turned slowly. 10 riders stood across the lobby, silent and steady. Their expressions were not angry, they were calm, respectful, and ready to protect. They didn't move toward him. They didn't block him. They just stood there, forming a quiet line of support. The man's eyes widened slightly. He hadn't expected an audience. He definitely hadn't expected this audience. The air change as the hospital lobby became incredibly still. Even the distant beeping of machines from the patient rooms felt quieter. Dr. Harper stepped forward gently, speaking with the same calm tone he used with worried patients. "Sir, we want to keep things peaceful. Emma is safe here. We will make a plan together, but only after speaking with everyone involved." The stepfather looked from the doctor, to Grace, to Linda, and then finally, back to the riders. Sam stepped forward just a little. Not close, not threatening. Just enough so the man knew he had support behind him. His voice was steady, low, and polite. "Emma is safe tonight. That's all." The stepfather swallowed. He opened his mouth to argue, but the words wouldn't come out, not because he felt afraid, but because the energy in the room had shifted. The riders were not aggressive, they were not loud. Their quiet strength filled the lobby like a warm shield. Even visitors sensed it. A mother walked past with her young son whispering, "It's okay, sweetie. They're just here to help that little girl." Her gentle tone made the man's expression soften, even if just a little. Emma stands. Something unexpected happened next. Little Emma, who had spent the whole day trembling, stood up slowly. Her legs shook, but she stood. She walked beside Linda, who held her hand with pride gently shining in her eyes. Grace watched her with deep admiration. Emma looked at her stepfather. Her voice was small, but it did not shake. "I don't want to go home tonight." The riders behind her stayed silent. Grace placed a warm hand on Emma's shoulder. "Thank you for speaking, Emma. That was very brave." Her stepfather looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time that evening. The strength in her small voice surprised him. He seemed uncertain now, unsure what to say. Before he could respond, security stepped forward politely. "Sir, we can talk outside," one guard said calmly. "We need to keep the lobby peaceful for our patients." The stepfather glanced again at the riders, then at Emma. The room was filled with calm eyes watching him, not judging him, just watching. He lowered his voice. "Fine, I'll wait outside." Outside, peace winds, the automatic doors opened. The man walked outside and stopped completely. He had seen the motorcycles earlier, but he hadn't seen the riders standing together. The entire parking lot looked like a peaceful gathering. Jackets with patches, soft murmurs of conversation, gentle nods. Every person standing there radiated warmth, unity, and quiet strength. The man stood frozen for a second. One rider walked by carrying a bag of snacks for the nurses. Another held water bottles for visitors. An older woman in a riding jacket knitted calmly on a bench. This was not a group here for conflict. This was a community here for kindness, and the stepfather slowly realized he was already outnumbered by compassion. Inside, Emma finds her strength back in the lobby. Emma let out a long breath she had been holding for too long. Grace smiled warmly at her. "You were very brave," she said softly. Emma held her star tightly. "I wasn't scared, not like before." Linda kissed her forehead. "Because you finally know you're not alone." Sam placed a hand over his heart. "Your father would be proud," he said softly. And for the first time since arriving at the hospital, Emma believed it. Morning light began to touch the sky outside the hospital, but the riders were still there. Some leaned quietly against their bikes, some talked in low voices, and others sipped warm coffee that a local cafe had delivered after hearing what happened. Even after a long night, none of them looked tired. They looked steady, ready, still guarding the hospital doors with the same gentle strength. Inside, Emma sat in the waiting room with her aunt. The fear that once filled her eyes had softened. She looked tired, yes, but calm. For the first time in a long while, her breathing came steady and relaxed. Grace walked in with a warm smile. "Emma," she said softly, "I have some news. After talking with the team and reviewing everything, we decided you will stay with your aunt for now. You won't have to go home until everything is sorted." Emma lifted her head, her eyes widening. "Really?" "Yes," Grace said. "You spoke bravely and we listened. You deserve to feel safe, and you will." Emma let out a breath she didn't even realize she was holding. For the first time, relief washed over her like sunlight breaking through a storm. Linda hugged her gently. "You're coming home with me, sweetheart, and we will take care of everything together." Emma closed her eyes and whispered, thank you so much." The riders come inside once more. When the news reached the riders in the parking lot, they quietly gathered near the entrance. The hospital allowed a few of them to come into the lobby again. Sam stepped forward, waiting with a proud smile. Tom, the leader, stood beside him. As Emma walked toward them, holding her aunt's hand, the riders straightened their backs, not in a strict way but proudly, like they were greeting a hero. Sam knelt down slightly, making sure he wasn't towering over her. "How are you feeling, Emma?" he asked gently. Emma looked up at him, clutching the star in her hand. "Better," she whispered. Then she added, "because of all of you." Tom's eyes softened. "Your father would be so proud of you today. You stood strong. That's what he always hoped for." Emma blinked. tears filling her eyes. But they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of belonging, of understanding that she mattered to people she had never met. An unforgettable gift. One of the riders, an older woman with silver streaks in her braid, stepped forward holding something wrapped in a soft cloth. "Emma," she said, "I made this for you during the night." Emma opened the cloth carefully. Inside was a handmade scarf, warm, cozy, and knitted in the same colors her father once wore on his rides. "I made one for your dad years ago," the woman explained softly. "I thought maybe you would like one too." Emma held the scarf against her chest. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Another rider stepped forward with a small wooden box. "We all signed this," he said. "Inside are messages from the riders who came tonight. If you ever feel scared or lonely, you can open it and remember that hundreds of people care about you." And Emma opened the box just a little. Inside were tiny folded notes, each with a rider's symbol. She closed it carefully, as if holding something precious. "You didn't have to do all this," she whispered. Tom answered softly, "Your father helped us more times than we can count. He gave us strength. Tonight, it was our turn to give it to you." The moment everyone watched Emma, wearing her new scarf, looked out the glass doors. Hundreds of riders stood outside, waiting quietly. She looked up at Linda, then at Sam. "Can I thank them?" she asked. "Of course," Sam said with a proud smile. Linda walked with her to the main doors. When Emma stepped outside, the soft morning air brushed her face. One rider noticed her first, and gently tapped the rider next to him. "Emma's here," he whispered. Like a wave moving across the sea, heads turned, voices softened, and a silence filled the parking lot. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of respect. Sam raised his hand, and the other riders followed. In one gentle motion, hundreds of hands rose in a peaceful greeting. Emma stood on the steps, her small figure framed by the rising sun. She swallowed, then spoke with a voice much stronger than the one she had the night before. "Thank you," she said, "for helping me, for standing here for me. I won't forget this, ever." A ripple of warm smiles moved across the group. Some riders blinked away tears, others nodded firmly. Sam stepped beside her. "You have a whole family here, Emma, not by blood, but by heart." A new beginning. As she walked back inside, holding her aunt's hand, Emma felt different. She felt safe. She felt loved. She felt strong. Grace watched her with a proud smile. "You're starting a new chapter today," she said. Emma nodded. "I'm not scared anymore." Linda kissed her forehead. "And you never have to feel alone again." Before leaving, Emma turned once more to look at the riders outside. They looked back with warm eyes, knowing they had done something meaningful, something that would stay with Emma forever. She pressed the little metal star to her heart and whispered softly, "I'm going to be okay now." And for the first time in a long time, she truly believed it.